G'day and welcome to this short video, hopefully fairly short, on the assignment for the Human Resources Diploma Unit HRM501A, which is Manage Human Resource Services. Manage Human Resources Services, sorry, extra S. Anyway, so this is one of the core units for the diploma, and it is reasonably straightforward, I hope, and it looks at the services that are provided by the Human Resource Department, but it looks mainly at how that service is provided to an organisation, or if you're a consultant, to your client groups, I guess. So the main task in this is to put together what they call a service level agreement, an SLA, which specifies the service levels and standards and responsibilities of the people who are party to the agreement to receive HR services. So it's a fairly important document. Not a lot of organisations have them, but there's always understanding, but I guess about what HR does. But if we have one of these, it makes it very, very clear as to what timelines and standards people can expect from the HR department. So let's have a quick look at this. Task 1, the HR services delivery strategies. So choose at least 4 services from the list, or you can choose any other HR type functions, but the list is fairly comprehensive, so I think you'll be okay with that. So task 1's not too hard, is it? It's just a matter of choosing 4 tasks. So it could be to do with induction, could be to do with recruitment and selection, could be to do with workers' compensation, employee assistance programs, work health and safety, what else? Workers' compensation, performance management. There's all sorts of ones that you can choose, but anyway, we're going to choose 4 services. So on the way to producing the SLA, we need to sort of look at each of those services and about what services would be provided in that, and what standards and timelines will be needed. So task 2 then is to discuss the preliminary planning steps to develop a service level agreement for the delivery of the selected HR services, noting in particular. So when it says noting in particular, that means we have to cover all of those, can't leave any out. So this is for each of the 4. Sometimes it'll be in common for the whole 4, so that's fine. But we need to look at the strategic and operational plans that relate to the selected services. So are there any direct relationships from the strategic plan to the services we're going to provide? So if one of the strategic measures was to develop staff to the highest level within our business or something, or within our business sector, then the induction and maybe the performance management systems would be really crucial to achieving part of that goal. So we're just looking for alignment for those sort of things. But there could be operational things too. There might be an operational requirement to expand a particular service or even downsize. So what HR service then is applicable to that activity? Consultation with stakeholders. So we're talking about fairly limited stakeholders here, because our stakeholders, as far as we're concerned for operating with HR, is the business itself and the management of the business and the employees. So we're going to mostly deal with other managers and supervisors to make sure that the HR services are delivered the way they need them. Compliance with legislation and organisational policies. So let's make sure what we're doing meets the law, whether it's workers' comp, meets the Workers' Comp Act, or whether it's to do with safety, meets the Work Health and Safety Model Act. It complies with equal employment opportunity if it's to do with recruitment selection. Those sort of things, you want to look at those. The exploration of service delivery requirements. So how do we actually identify them? So the specification of performance standards and timeframes. So that might be, once we know there's a vacancy, if we're doing recruiting and selecting, that there's a timeline from when we're told about the vacancy and we research with the line manager and senior staff whether we'll actually fill the vacancy or not, or maybe redesign the job, but then we'll confirm the new position description or the existing one within, say, 3 days. We'll start a recruiting strategy within 4 days. Whatever it is, these are the things that you're going to say, what you're going to do and what timeline they'll be within. We also need to look at what training and support might be required to implement the agreement. So that might be from the line managers or even the staff or workers about what they need to know and how we can get that information to them to make sure they can meet their end of the bargain. Remember, this is an agreement. It's not just us telling people, it's an agreement of what they're going to contribute to. Also going to look at the quality assurance processes. So in other words, how do we make sure this is best practice and what will we do to measure that? The monitoring process and managing of underperformance relating to the SLA. So remember, this underperformance is not to do with people, well, it could be, but it's to do with the underperformance of the SLA itself. That if we're falling behind on the timelines, if we're not getting things done to the level we said we get them done, then how do we monitor that, and then what do we do about it? Or if line managers aren't meeting their commitments under it, so what do we do about it? That's what it's talking about, the underperformance there. So it's not the underperformance of people doing their job, it's the underperformance of our services or people's responsibilities with the agreement. Risk analysis and or cost benefit analysis. So this is pretty important at a diploma level, that we make choices not based on hunches or whatever. We can actually show some objective information about why this is the good thing to do. So the risk analysis could be to do with compliance. Obviously, if we don't do things a certain way, then we may not be compliant with the law. But cost benefit's another good thing to look at too. I'm not asking for both, but one or the other. And the costs can be, in time and money. It might be distraction for people on the job, things like that. So they're the costs that might go with something. Then all the benefits, so hopefully you list those, and it'll be clear to anyone why we've chosen to do it, because the benefits far outweigh the costs. So it might improve productivity or morale, things like that. So I hope that makes sense. Definition of the roles and responsibilities of the agreement parties. So whoever's going to do what. So the HR staff will obviously have quite a bit to do, but the other people we're serving will need to respond to our requests, and also for authority and approvals and things like that. So that's got to be defined. And the negotiation process to achieve a final agreement. So what would be involved in getting the whole thing together and signed off. Hopefully the samples that you've got of SLAs, and even my old assignment, it's a fairly simple one, but it may be helpful. Will help you through those sort of things, just to identify them all. So then task 3 is actually put all that together and make the SLA into a written document. Excuse me, I've just got a little tickle here. Thank you for allowing me to do that. Didn't have much to say, did you? Anyway, so we've got to prepare the actual document now. I prefer a table, but it doesn't have to be. You can use any format you like, as long as it's clear and presents all of those headings that we've talked about. Task 4 then, evaluation. So we need to look at how we will evaluate the success or otherwise of the SLA. So we're going to get some feedback that usually requires the design of a questionnaire, or there might already be a questionnaire that goes out to employees that can just be modified a little bit to make sure it picks up the SLA stuff. What will we do from recommendations and from the analysis of that information, and how will we get people to agree to any variations if we find the SLA needs to be refined. So that's a fairly important part of any SLA, isn't it? We've got to be able to evaluate it and respond to any changes that need to be made. And then the last task is to do with business ethics, integrating business ethics into the business and into our own HR behaviour. Excuse me. I'm sorry about that. So the first part of this is discuss how a code of conduct or some other statement of organisational values or ethics or any other policy that might relate, how it could actually embed the ethical conduct into business and HR practices. So is it a tool that helps us do that? What other things could we do? Then describe how ethical obligations may be clarified with HR staff. So we need to, as a leader in an HR department, we need to clarify these things with HR staff. So they obviously do with privacy, confidentiality, treating people with respect and all that sort of stuff, but also how we give advice. All those other things to do with ethics that aren't quite so obvious, not just how we treat people. Discuss how the ethical behaviour of HR staff and the need for confidentiality may be monitored and responded to where necessary. So this is sort of the performance management, if you like, of HR staff as regard to ethics. So coaching and mentoring would be a pretty good thing in here that might help us with this particular task. And then the last part of the last thing is provide some insight into how you, so this is pretty personal, would ensure your own consistent ethical behaviour and discuss at least 2 instances from your experience where you have maintained organisational values in difficult conditions. Now that's if the organisational values are good ones, of course, but sometimes organisations have a list of values that people are meant to adhere to, but then sometimes the processes are set up don't actually sort of conform with it, or some particular manager doesn't conform with it, and that's when it gets difficult for us, isn't it? But it's up to us to maintain the value, and this is what I'm asking you about here. So that's it. Pretty good unit, one of the core units, fairly important. Hopefully you'll feel like you've achieved something when you put that SLA together. Thanks for that, I'll see you later.